Hey, welcome everybody to Marketing Management and Money. I'm not sure if I'm going to count this as a formal episode. I think I'm going to count it as a side conversation. However, I want to point this out. Most of our side conversations are based on just like our opinion of stuff. This is going to be very business oriented, but I do have a question that I want to run past you, and I'd like to get your professional advice on this question. Okay. So here's the situation. I am in the contracting phase of a European expansion right now. So one of the companies that I work with, I got the cool opportunity of getting to do a European expansion for them. And so I've traveled to Europe a couple times. We've covered that a little bit on the show, made some business connections, and it's going exceptionally well. We've developed a new product that we're going to introduce specifically for Europe, and that's going to finish getting out of the R&D stage here in the next couple of weeks. And so I'm going to show up in Europe with a brand new product and brand new market, and so should be a really cool opportunity. I'm looking forward to this. But what has been happening throughout this particular journey is that I'm recognizing a lot of the subtle nuances. And I think that for people who are looking at doing a business expansion, I mean, this is a European business expansion, and so it's going to have that international component to it. But honestly, if you're looking at, launching a second location, or, if you're looking at maybe hiring, a company that's now, you're going to take all of your marketing from in-house and move it to outsourced, like the same subtle nuances, come into play. So, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't have any intentions of going international, I would say these concepts apply for any major expansion that you're going to do with your company. And so if it requires you to rethink things, gives you a little bit of a clean slate opportunity, so we've been looking at this. There's a couple things that we want to clean up while we're doing this. It's like, hey, here in the U.S. market, we're already in contracts. Some of those contracts were negotiated well. Some of those contracts were negotiated poorly, and we're stuck in those contracts, and we have to navigate all those things, But in Europe, like, I don't have contracts with anybody, so I literally can set it up how I want with the experience of what we've done in the U.S. to kind of go off of and say, okay, don't do this, And one of those things, for instance, just to, kind of bring it into a little bit more tangible, is we're going to specifically keep this product offline, so we're not going to offer this product online in Europe. And so the only way that you can get this product is through distributors. And that's going to make it more favorable. The distributors are going to love that, but it also gives me a lot of control, because the second you put something online, I'll tell you what, you lose a lot of control. People out there, if you are looking at doing like an Amazon business, and it's great, a lot of people make a lot of money with Amazon businesses, but you lose a lot of control. And people don't realize, they've got a good business and they're like, oh, we should expand into Amazon. And the second they expand into Amazon and you start playing the games, and, it's...
So for the listeners, what kind of, I know most of the answer, but I'm curious to see from your perspective as well, what kind of control do they lose? What is that trade-off? Because, sometimes the only thing they're thinking about is revenue, right? I can make more revenue, but we forget about the backside or the operational side that inherently other problems creep in because of.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in this particular instance, what you got, well, not even in this instance, let me go a little bit broader here. So in answer to your question, if you have a product that really moves on Amazon, you'll get third-party sellers. And with this particular product, we get sellers that we don't even know who they are. We don't know how they got our product. And it's a big enough issue, I can tell you this, that Amazon has a method to combat it where you can subscribe to this program that they have. At the time we looked into it, there was no cost to subscribe to it. I don't know if they are doing a cost now. We looked into it about a year ago. Anyway, it's a tracking system where you put an identifier, like a sticker or something, on your packaging, and then you can now track it through Amazon. And it's really, really a cool process. So Amazon, for as much as I either love or hate them, there are things I love about them and things I hate about them, right? And that's probably everybody. But they're very up on their process. Like the way that they go about their process is very, very cutting edge. They are setting the standard for a lot of companies to follow with the way they process. And so this was no exception. And I apologize. I was not actually planning on going down the Amazon road, and so I don't remember off the top of my head what that was called, the tracking system that they've implemented. We opted not to do it because we sell primarily outside of Amazon. And so I didn't want to give Amazon additional control or leverage or dictation in how things should or shouldn't be operated. And so that's the kind of stuff that you run into with Amazon is when you start going with Amazon. And it's not like a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get into this contract and now I have to follow the contract. Amazon doesn't work that way. But they are such a big player, and they set the standard for so many things. It's kind of like, when I travel the world, the U.S. is still the standard. And so I can get by with, U.S. references. I can get by with English. I can get by with the dollar. In all of these, foreign countries. And if you look at like the population of the U.S. compared to the population of the rest of the world, we're what, 3-4% of the total population? Not a huge percentage, but yet because we're such a big player in business, we get to kind of dictate terms, whether other countries like it or not. Well, Amazon's the same way. They're such a big player that they get to dictate terms whether you like it or not. And so you get to follow a lot of their standards just because that's what your customers are now expecting you to do. And so, but when you start selling via Amazon, I'll tell you, be aware of all of the fees, the warehousing, the fulfillment.
And it's not that they're small percentages, but they add up.
Well, and some of them aren't small percentages.
True. Because some of them are based off of
ad spend
volume.
Man, ad spend, and they call it ACOS, average cost of sale. But like your ad spend going through, so when you get on Amazon, you see sponsored products, right?
Right.
Man, that eats into it. Like you can lose 10 or 20% of your margin on ad spend. And when I say 10 or 20%, obviously it totally depends the product that you're moving. But don't be shocked to see those kinds of numbers. And so if you've got an item that you've only got 40% margin on, and then you give up 20% on ad spend, and then you give up another 10% for Amazon fees, and all of a sudden you're only making 10% on this thing.
Yeah, you better pray you're doing huge volume.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it and you're like, oh, my sales doubled on Amazon. I'm like, your sales doubled, but your margin got slashed. Yeah. And so you need your sales to quadruple to break even. So be able, and if that didn't make any sense to you, do the financial calculations. We hammer that left and right. And so anyway, so jumping back. We made a conscious decision going into Europe that we're going to keep this offline. And so we're limiting the number of partners so that we have more control over that. And so right now I'm looking at expanding into Europe with 3 or 4 partners. And
none of those partners are going to do online?
No. and that'll be part of the
contract.
Part of the contract.
Okay.
Yeah, is to just tell them that it's like, look, this is going to be a B2B distribution model, and we want to stick with a B2B distribution model. This is a high professional product, I wish that I could be a little bit more specific, but the deal is not done, and so I've got to keep some things a little bit, a little bit confidential here. But this is a high-level professional item, and so we've made the decision to keep it in the professional realm, and so we're going through distribution that would go direct to businesses and charge a little bit of a premium, but also keep the quality high. And so higher quality, higher premium, that's the model that we're looking at. So I'm looking at expanding this product line, setting up some distribution. And I was going, this is where the question comes in. All right. Here we are, halfway through the episode, and I'm finally getting to the question that I have for you. So I'm looking at setting up this distribution model, and I was going to go with a tiered price point. So you buy 1 through 10, you get X price. You buy 11 through 100, you get a little bit of better price. You buy 100 through 500, you get better pricing. Over 1,000, you buy, you get great pricing. And so what I was going to do is I was just going to create a price sheet, and I was going to be like, look, here's your pricing model. That just put it in black and white, and this is what you have, right? Now, keep in mind on the international front, as much as I talk to other businesses and people that are doing international, I feel like I'm right on par with them. International is a tough game, and there's very few people who are like solid on understanding international. I've talked to, I'm doing air quotes right now that says, professional consultants, professional international consultants, both in the U.S. and in Europe, and some of them have been excellent and others have been worthless. Like I'm thinking to myself, I could have Googled a better response than what you gave me, I did have one that I asked for a full-fledged refund on all of their consulting fees because, I'm like, this is garbage. I'm sorry. You guys provided zero insight. When I'm talking with people and looking at this, this pricing model, I just figured a tiered volume pricing model would make sense. It's very common. Mm-hmm. You see it all over. So I'm talking to a friend of mine, and she says, she's like, single price. I'm like, what do you mean single price? She's like, one price. Whether they buy one of them, whether they buy 5,000 of them, single price. Why not? And I looked at it, and I'm just like, because that's not what you do. That's why not. She's like, give me a real answer. Why not? And so I started thinking about it. And and so while I was thinking about it, she's like, let me tell you why. Okay. So she says, well, you're dealing with international. The international accounting is going to be a beast. And so if you have single price, you're eliminating a lot of confusion. It's like, look, this is the price that it goes. Every single country, doesn't matter. Boom, here you go. This is your single price. I mean, obviously there's an exchange rate that you have to do, but that's to her point is to say, look, if I've got one price, it's a lot easier to calculate my exchange rates as opposed to having to calculate exchange rates for, a whole tier of pricing.
Right.
It's like, if you've got one price, and I said, well, that, they don't buy volume. And she's like, isn't that a good thing? She's like, you're trying to expand into Europe. If they're buying volume, that's risky. You've just introduced risk into that. Now, I guess I should clarify this. Single price freight is on their end. So the variable becomes freight. If they want better pricing, they buy at the volumes that make sense for their freight. So if they want to ship a container, they're going to buy whatever fills a container. If they want to ship by pallet, they buy whatever does by pallet. If they ship individual, you're going to pay as much for shipping as you're going to pay for the product.
Right.
And so they're naturally incentivized by freight to buy in bulk. And so I don't have to arbitrarily come up with those rates. They just follow market trends of what freight is, and you put all the freight on their end, which usually is advantageous for them to import as opposed to you to export, right? Because then they're dealing with all of the paperwork and different things in their own country.
Right.
You're not having to find someone to facilitate those those things for you, right?
Brokerage it. Okay. All right.
So anyway, she's like, yeah, just if you're trying to manage your cash flow, if they're buying in bulk, you're going to get hit with these surprise orders that you don't know. Okay, so they do a big order because they're incentivized to get a container's worth because they're trying to hit the freight and your discount, so they might overbuy. And so you would just get hit with really big orders occasionally. She's like, wouldn't it be better to have steady flow, easier to manage your cash flow? She's like, they're managing the freight side, so it doesn't cost you anything different. And I'm like, okay. So I did in this minute, I finally came up with a reason. I'm like, okay, I have a good reason to go with a tiered pricing model.
As you can see my brain turning like crazy.
Well, this is why I'm asking you. Okay. So I came up with a reason. I'm like, if I have someone who is going to buy consistently in lower volume, then the tiered model gives me more margin on the lower volume because I'm giving away margin for that.
Right.
Her comment back to me was, okay, you're looking at 3 to 4 partners to cover all of Europe. Like, yeah. She's like, are any of these low volume? Like, why are you even considering low volume? Because every single one of your partners is covering multiple countries. We're talking, they've got...
But low volume is relative.
Okay.
I.e., if I'm selling Ferraris, right? 2 is low volume. 10 is high volume, right?
Right. If you're selling...
If I'm selling pencils, low volume is 1 million, high volume is 1 billion, right?
Okay, yeah.
So it's kind of relative as you think about it.
But the tiered pricing that I was going to put in place, I don't expect any of these potential partners to be on the low volume side. Like, I was going to price it to encourage all of them to be on the high volume side.
You better put this as a sideline because I'm going to start talking. Okay, so do you understand?
we are 20 minutes into this and we haven't decided if it's a sideline or an episode yet.
Do you know how many of the product can fit in an average container? I mean, do you know the back side of everything of this?
We're getting that. So this is a large...
That's going to determine, because when I hear large volume, my first thing is large volume 10 or is large volume 100?
So this is interesting. Okay, I'm going to answer your question, but we're gonna walk around the block to go next door here.
All right, but here's the one fallacy that you have to remember. The number one reason why people do tiered cost structures, right? They tier it, is because they're trying to pass on the efficiencies of mass producing something versus producing one, right? So if I'm producing more, I get more efficiency out of my manufacturing models.
Correct.
So I'm passing that cost savings on to my vendor,
So, okay. Oh, there's a lot to unpack in this.
That's the sole reason why you do it, not to encourage them to buy higher volume. It's because we can usually produce something more efficiently when we do more.
You want economies of scale.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at manufacturing, I'm going to go Asian manufacturing versus U.S. manufacturing.
Ooh.
This is a big debate going on right
Ooh.
now, okay, especially with the tensions between the U.S. and China. And so a lot of that manufacturing is moving to other places still, over
Correct.
in Asia. They're following the Asian model of very low wages. And that part of the world is fantastic at manufacturing. That is a strong competitive advantage that they have. So, and maybe this needs to be a side conversation because you're getting into my opinion here. The U.S. wants to, bring manufacturing back to the U.S., and you hear that in the political rhetoric. You hear that with businesses. And, I've looked at this. And when I say I've looked at this, like I haven't read an article. Like I've dug into this because this is one of the things that we're trying to do here. And I'll tell you that the only way, like we cannot, and when I say we, I'm talking the U.S. here, the U.S. cannot copycat China and expect to have any sort of competitive advantage. If they just take a Me Too process,
exactly,
they're just going to be worse at it, and so
the manufacturing isn't the issue. The quality of the product isn't the issue. It's the cost associated with producing the product is the issue between.
I'm even going to argue against that.
Our labor costs are sometimes 20 times that. So, our energy costs are significantly higher.
Okay, but
see, it's oh yeah, you better keep this a sideline
because we have to decide on something at some point. This is my argument. If you want to, the reason why, I love the example of pens. So pens historically in the early 1900s were very expensive, and they were fountain pens, right? And then all of a sudden the ballpoint pen was invented. And pens are one of the biggest throwaway commodities ever. Everyone just puts a little bowl of pens out there.
Yeah.
Well, 100 years ago, pens were very expensive. So what changed? The thing that changed was technology.
Right.
Okay. The technology, the way that we went about doing pens changed. The pen itself really hasn't changed all that much, right?
Right.
And so, if you look at the technology, and this is where my argument comes in against, Asian manufacturing.
You think technology is going to be that big of a player in the next?
I think technology has to be the driving force to bring manufacturing back to U.S. if that is the goal.
I absolutely agree with that comment.
And so, going back to so economies of scale are the old model of manufacturing. Now, this is we are officially a side conversation right now because anyone at this point can start arguing and saying, I disagree with you. And so this is going to stay a side conversation. But so manufacturing is based on economies of scale, but we've gotten to the point that we are overproducing and we're creating so much junk. We're filling up landfills with, like we have a consumer mentality and consumer markets.
Correct.
Okay. Well, if you look at, building, not overproducing, but target producing what you need. And so economies of scale only work when I have just tons of consumerism that's just all wanting the exact same thing, but it kills all the customization. So with the technology that we have, so going back to the example of the product that we're producing, one of the reasons why Europe is interested in it is because we are using advanced manufacturing techniques to produce it. It's a very, basic product. Like the product itself, not exciting, but the manufacturing process is very, very innovative, which means that we don't have as big of a barrier for economies of scale. When you're talking about, well, hey, isn't it better? Like we do small run manufacturing, or what we're getting into is small run manufacturing using advanced manufacturing techniques, i.e., I can produce 20 units for the same cost that I can produce 500 units. And so therefore, I can say, well, I shouldn't say the same cost, but for relatively close enough that I can now reduce inventory holding costs to offset the manufacturing costs, because this is just in time concept.
Yeah, but that's an interesting concept, because if there is no economy of scales in the manufacturing, meaning it's the same price to produce unit 1 as it is unit 500, right?
Okay.
Then your efficiencies are neither good nor bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the fact that to create the prototype, does that make sense? Is not, I don't have to spend thousands to do a prototype. I can do a prototype fairly inexpensive, and well, you know what it is. I mean, prototyping is the expensive part of R&D, working out those glitches and fine tuning the metrics, and how does this fit into here? And wait a minute, we screwed up the the parameters on this piece, and but I would have to think that if the cost to produce the prototype is almost the same as the finished run, as long as there's a market for it, I mean, that's in some ways it's an amazing concept.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm like, is this a strong competitive advantage if you could buy exactly what you want? Do you remember, I think the movie was Father of the Bride. It was Steve Martin, and there's this scene where he's in the grocery store, and he's buying hot dogs in a pack of 6 and hot dog buns in a pack of 8, and he's pulling out 2 of the buns, and I mean, it's all comedic, but it's him having this, traumatic breakdown in the store, because he's like, why do I need to buy 2 extra buns when this comes in a pack of 6? And, and it's kind of funny, but in reality, if you think about it, that's what we want. We want to buy what we need, not what, what fits. And so if I could go to a customer and I could say, hey, you know what? You set your own MOQs. Like, it's no longer 500. It's you tell me what you want to buy.
See, they're starting to do that in the textile industry with shirts and other things like that, clothing. I buy it to fit, and I send them my measurements. I buy it to fit. They ship it directly to my house. The only problem with that is that, that shirt is $50 instead of $20. Yeah. So as long as I'm, there's a niche market for it, there certainly is, because, those there's several of them that are doing really well.
And this is interesting, because I should clarify this. With the process that we're doing, we are not cheaper than traditional manufacturing.
Oh, yeah. You can't be.
Yeah. And so...
because you don't have the economies of scale. See, that's the difference.
Yeah.
But that's what's also fascinating about it, is that generally most manufacturing, the first little bit is very expensive, but then you go into huge runs.
Right.
And then you get the economies of scale. So now it becomes pennies versus... thousands to produce it.
Yeah.
Because the molds are set up, the manufacturing line is set up, all those efficiencies increase. But in, the additive manufacturing, I make an argument today that the efficiencies aren't quite there yet.
No, they aren't. They absolutely aren't.
And I don't know if they ever will be.
But see,
maybe.
So if you look at this, and this goes into the theory of, so I put it into 3 categories: low volume, medium volume, and high volume. Now, this is all relative to, your pencil Ferrari concept.
Yeah.
But you cannot do this theory that I'm talking about in high volume. It does well.
You can.
I've never been able to come up with a formula that makes sense. But in low and medium volume runs, you can. And so if you were to graph this, there's a break-even threshold that will hit at a certain number of units, at which point you would have been better off going to a economy of scale mass volume run. But see, economies of scale are high upfront capital, which creates a lot of risk.
Right.
So if I reduce my upfront capital and I say, okay, I'm going to, I'm going to make it quicker to market, more customizable, only run small to medium runs. And because it's quicker to market, we're going to introduce 6 new products instead of 1 new product. And the cumulative of the 6 should give me the profitability of the 1. That's the theory.
Mm.
Too bad there wasn't a video on you, because your body language is what's talking right now.
Well, it's here's the crazy thing about as we advance with technology is that technology has a window in there that has high levels of uncertainty, just because we don't, 2 things. One, we don't know how it's going to affect the market, and we don't know if the technology is sustainable. Right?
Yeah.
So, and some technology changes so fast that you constantly see. That's the tough thing about innovation, is if you're in an industry where you're innovative, you have to continue to innovate. That's how you stay competitive, is innovation.
So oh my gosh, and this has been years.
Because I can be innovative and start the first cell phone, but guess what? That original cell phone is worthless today.
There was a report that I read years ago, so long ago that I don't even remember it, but the concept of it was fascinating. The author of the report was making the argument that no technology has ever been completely disrupted to the point that it was abandoned. And so he was making the argument that even when you have old technology, it just moves into a different realm. And he brought up some really compelling points. So at the time when this report came out, like I said, this is years ago, digital cameras were just getting good enough that it was this argument of whether professional photographers should go digital or whether they should go film. Okay, so what was that, 15 years ago or something?
Yeah, maybe more, at least.
And so so he used the film industry, and he pointed out that every technological breakthrough in film, there's still a market for the old technology that is being used for a commercial purpose, and
for a commercial purpose?
For a commercial purpose.
Really?
Yeah, and he went through and he cited it, and so his whole argument was to say technologies don't ever go away, because everyone's always nervous about, oh, well, this is going to get replaced by the new technology. And I'm like, well, it's going to get replaced mainstream by the new technology.
Yeah, mainstream it always does. See, that's why when he says commercial, I'm like, well, because mainstream, a lot of things get replaced, but from a...
You got to realize there's, 8 billion, 9 billion people on this planet. I forget what the numbers are right now. It's a big number. And I don't think people can wrap their heads around what, the number 8 billion really means.
Yeah.
And so when you start thinking about, to be a successful business, how many sales do you need to make? Most people are in the thousands.
Right.
And so what percentage of the population do you have to sell to? Nothing. Drop in the bucket. And so, to be able to still sell commercially doesn't mean that like you can be niche upon niche upon niche and still have a successful business.
Yeah, as long as you're connected into the niche.
Correct. And that can be challenging.
Yeah, because those niche, well, it was like crazy enough. I mean, fashion is an amazing thing to watch, because today kids are wearing what I wore in junior high, right?
I know, yeah.
And they think they're super cool, and I'm like, I was way cooler before you were cool.
Right.
I wore that first. Okay. And think about it. When I was in junior high, high tops were just coming out then. Mm-hmm. Okay. So as the high tops came in, that was the new fad for basketball and things like that. And interesting enough, they had the lace up, and then you had the Velcro strap that came across the top. And if you could afford, and back then, I mean, they were a pretty penny back then,
Oh, they still are. My son buys shoes. Oh my gosh.
But,
Jordans.
Oh yeah. Jordans are always hundreds. Nasty.
Yeah.
But
they're like investments.
I see kids wearing that, and I'm just like, I don't know why. And maybe it's because when I grew up with them, I look at them and I'm going, "You're so outdated. Those shoes are heinous." Because it's old technology, if you know what I mean. It's the old style, the old look. But anyways, fashion is an amazing one to watch as a case study, because how things, the technology or the styles, okay, I'm going to use those words interchangeably for this example. They don't change. People just modify them based off of different colors or different materials now in order to create a newer feel, even though style was the same.
Well, one that I find fascinating is phone sizes. So
went small and now they're huge again.
Yeah, like they constantly are bouncing between, we're going to make this as teeny as possible. We're going to make this as big as possible. And you just see them, go big and small and big. It's like a little accordion.
Yeah. So, but if you're innovative, that's the thing, whether it's styles, clothing, I argue even to some degree with food, if you're innovative, you have to continue to stay innovative if that's what you are. If you're a commodity, though, think about it. If you're a commodity, it's solely you're competing on cost. So you either have to cut, raise your price or decrease your expenses to stay profitable as a commodity. But a lot of times you can't increase your price, because you're competing with 10 other models, and so you have to learn to become very, very efficient in cutting your expenses to stay competitive. High volumes.
Okay, so let's go back to the original question that you haven't answered yet.
So. Well, my argument is the original question is this: you're trying. Well, I don't know. Are you trying to compete as a innovation and technology, or are you trying to compete as a commodity?
In between, and so
you're going to be driven one way or the other. No one stays in between. You either go one way or the other.
Well, no, you do stay in between, but you do get pressure.
Yeah, something's going to force you to one side of that pendulum or another.
But like honestly, true commodities are hard to come by. Very few things are true commodities.
Yeah.
And so this particular product, there's nothing innovative about the product. And so
your argument is the process that you're using.
Yeah, but so to your point, I would say that we don't get to dictate the price. The price gets to dictate us. And so we are trying to cut our cost to match the price. We have a little bit of room, like a true commodity has no room. You have no control over the price whatsoever. So we have a little bit of room, but not much.
So my answer to your question is if you have the ability to have economies of scale in the manufacturing, it makes sense to have a tiered pricing structure. If you do not have economies of scale, then the argument should be you should have a single price, because otherwise what you're doing is, with economies of scale, your margins aren't changing because your efficiencies got greater with more, so your margins aren't changing.
So do you think the customer would prefer a single price? It seems like a customer advantage to me.
I'd probably ask the question, commodity. So looking at your product, commodity means I'm selling, keep numbers simple, I'm selling 100 a day. Technology wise, if I'm not a commodity, I'm in an innovation area or something, I'm selling 2 a day. That to give that as kind of a feel. So if I'm looking at high volume being 100 a day, then I think customers are going to look to say, hey, the standard practice is some type of a tier. However, if I'm selling 2 a day, i.e. I'm selling Rolls Royces,
Well, okay, but
then there is no, matter of fact, people, if you go into a Ferrari store and you have to ask the price, they're not selling to you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, I wouldn't know because I've never done that.
On one of your trips, going to a Ferrari store
and ask the price.
Yeah, just
after they've already looked me up and down.
Yeah, because they don't. The nice thing about it is dress nowadays is so across the board. It's not. Think about it.
But accessories aren't. Like, there's still.
But yeah, they can. I mean, anyone.
I will agree that it's not where it used to be.
If I have a long sleeve shirt, they're not going to see my watch. They're not. I mean, and half the people they come in grungy. I think about it. When you grew up, if your pants had holes in it, what did it say about your social status?
Poor.
Yes. Okay. Now, if you have holes in your pants, what does it say about your social status?
Designer.
You can't, but you can't really establish their socioeconomic, background by their clothing anymore, right? You can't. A little bit. But generally, the average person, if you have holes in your pants, it doesn't say whether you're rich or poor.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is there was a day when business, where our parents, when they went out shopping, they got dressed up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, when you go out shopping now, half the people, you wonder if they even realize they're wearing what they're wearing, right? Because you're just like, wow, there's obviously not a single mirror in your house, because otherwise you would have never came out of your house like that.
I'll tell you what's interesting. You go to a funeral, the wide range of attire at a funeral, because to me,
I saw someone, true story, just this week, went to a funeral of a guy I've known for years. And anyways, he nice guy, but just not much family. So I thought, I need to go. I respect the guy. When I showed up, there literally, was someone in pajamas sitting at the funeral. No, you think I'm joking. No, I had to do a double take. And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. What is this world coming to?
I saw a flyer once it was a professional training, like improve your business skills. It was entry-level professional training, but it was professional training, and it put at the bottom, it said, no pajamas.
Really?
Yeah. Posted on the flyer.
Yeah. So that's my point. Dress standards doesn't say much anymore. So I think you have a hard time judging the social status of an individual. But I'm telling you, if you go into a Ferrari dealership and you have to ask the price, versus, hey, that's the one I want. Let's do this deal.
Yeah. Okay. So final clarification, because I know I don't want to get too super ranty, but final clarification. Do you perceive it from the customer's perspective to be an advantage? Like, is this something that the customer would like to have just a set price? You just go to them and you're like, look, we don't negotiate, we don't haggle. Literally, this is the price. You want to buy one, you want to buy 700, I don't care. Is that something that the customer's like, oh, I love this. Thank you for the simplicity. You gave me your best pricing. I don't even have to worry about it. Or is the customer like, well, I was really going to move a lot of these, and now you're giving this guy who's moving 3 of them, he's getting the same price. Now, they're all going to have territorial contracts. So they're the only one covering these countries.
All right. So here's my official answer.
Ooh, official. Did we move back to an episode, or are we still a side conversation?
No, side conversation.
Okay, so it's official side conversation
answer. You might have to put a bleep in there. This is my answer. You do whatever the Europeans want.
But they don't know what they want, because everyone's going to default to what they're used to.
So inside the States, I would argue that it's common practice that if you're in manufacturing, there's a tiered cost structure.
So
I don't know what it is in Europe.
Well, I can tell you one of the countries that I'm working with, they are tiered, and they expect tiered.
So that's your ansser.
No, just because they expect it doesn't mean they want it.
Why did we talk for 30 minutes?
I'm done. All right.
Well, I don't know. It is a fascinating question.
Humans are funny because
generally, if I can get a price break, See, because for me, think about it. Whether I sell one or I sell I'm the buyer and I'm going to turn around and sell them. Okay.
Right.
So when I buy them,
because this is distribution. So
yes. So if I can buy 1 or 100 and after 10, I start getting price breaks. After 50, I start getting price breaks, but I can sell them all for the same price. So my margins, if I can buy in volume, but sell them at the same price point, I make more money off the deal. That's what I want. I always want to make more money.
Okay, but I'm looking at it from the risk mitigation because I'm going to them. We're launching a new product into a new market. And if I'm telling them, I'm like, look, I gave you my best pricing, and if you want to start small, you start small. Like, I'm trusting that you're going to do your due diligence and push as many as you can. Now, mind you, there's still an economy of scale with freight.
Yeah. There is.
And so we didn't eliminate the economy of scale. We just removed it from the one side.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm giving you the best pricing. If you want the economies, you figure out the freight. You work the system to get that awesome pricing, because it's freight versus warehousing. That's what it always boils down to.
So what are you going to do when they come back and say, do you have any tiered pricing? So if I buy more units, I get a better price?
I'd just say I already gave you my best price.
Okay.
And it'd have to be a good enough, like, you can't give them a single price that's junk.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
If
you want them, you want to do business with them. They could really, if they could move a lot of project, it's advantageous for both.
Yeah.
So I get that piece of it.
And so, I don't know. Okay, well, glad that we ran in circles. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it.
If anybody has a thought for Ryan,
if you
send
can
an
help
email
me,
to
please.
Ryan at Marketing Management and Money, telling him what he should do.
And make it quick because I got to get back to some partners. I probably will have.
And if anyone is an
already...
international broker and can help make this deal sweeter for all the parties, send an email to Ryan at Marketing Management and Money. He would love to hear from you.
I had a couple brokers. They were serious and they were awesome. They were telling me all they were going to provide, and I'm thinking to myself, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And so I asked him, I'm like, all right, what's your price model? I wouldn't do good in a Ferrari dealership because I wanted to know what their price model was. And they told me their retainer plus everything. And
wow.
And I looked at
Retainer,
it.
Huh?
Yeah. The one, it was to just cover their fees at our margins. It was, I don't remember if it was $500,000 or $1 million sales that just went to cover their fees. I'm like,
I get that shipping, importing and exporting, let's put it that way. I get that importing and exporting is a little bit trickier, but there's good information out there on how to do it.
Okay. So I think that,
it's like
in the U.S., I think we're not as good as other countries.
Well, because we
don't have to
I'm going
be.
to change that. I'm going to say the coastal states are, but we have a huge chunk inside of the U.S. that we just do business state to state.
But even the coastal states, see, here's the thing, is there's enough consumers in the U.S. that I can just sell to the U.S. and have a very profitable company.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
But you get in other parts of the world, if I'm Luxembourg, you better believe that I partner with people. I deal with people. I have to, in fact, there's not a country in Europe, and, I could say the same thing for Africa or South America or what. There are some in Asia that are big enough. China's big enough that you could do. India's big enough that they could, stand. In fact, lots of them. But, most of the countries have to partner with other countries because they just don't have the population density that the U.S. has. We're the third or fourth most populated country, and then in terms of consumerism, like, we're probably number one. I don't.
We
Well, I don't know
are,
if we are number one per capita, but I don't know if we are number one.
like
Total
gross domestic.
Yeah. And so
I was just looking at stats of that, but I was looking at comparing some stuff between U.S. and Germany on some different. Well, that email I sent you.
Yeah.
I was digging into that to see and understand it better, and I need to dig into it some more. But because I could compare, different countries, but yeah, like U.S. to Germany, it's not even comparison. U.S. and everything just slaughters Germany as a country. But
you said that very offensively.
No,
you're just talking
no.
the sheer volume of
Sheer volume.
consumerism.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you said U.S. compared to Germany and everything just slaughters them.
No,
and I'm like,
yeah,
their soccer
slaughter
team's
is in-
pretty pissed right now.
Yeah, just in consumer things, just our volume of consumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, I don't compare it to anything else.
That's what I'm saying.
I love the
is
Germans; they're awesome.
a lot of a lot of U.S. companies, they don't have to go elsewhere, but all of these other countries, they have to sell to other countries if they want to go big, and so it's a lot more common to see that international.
Well, everything but that's just exactly right. When you get over into Europe, every country is intertwined.
They are.
The best way to understand Europe for someone who hasn't been there, it's like Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, California. In some ways, our markets are all intertwined. We're all pulling resources from each other. We're doing business in all those other states. The boundaries between them are not that great. We can move product fairly easy. That's what Europe is.
Yeah, our states
you
are
talk
their
countries, and we think countries, but they function more like a bunch of states and how they interact with each other.
Yeah, except for there's no federal government.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the big difference.
Which is why.
No, which is good and bad. Some things it's nice to have everyone on the same page, but other things that you don't have that federal overreach, and so it's like, oh, hey, I get to literally do what I want to do.
Yeah, yeah. So. The EU is trying to do some stuff, but
they still,
it's not a federal government.
It's not a federal government, So anyway, okay, wow, that was fun. I think we'll wrap it up there. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. We will catch you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.